I'm going to first let Crystal come up and say a few words to you guys. So since we're going to be talking about listing presentation, she's going to give you some ideas of what you should do with titles. So
yeah. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody on Zoom. So today's listings, and yesterday we talked about the owner's title policy and why it's important. Now it's part of the contract on the seller side. When you have a listing, another important title tip, as soon as you have the listing, send it to your title office. So that way they can start running the title search. That way, if your seller has any liens or a name match, when you go under contract, it's clear, you're ready to go, and you can accommodate that short, seller disclosure deadline. So that's a thing right now with how fast the market's moving. So my recommendation, like I said, get it over as soon as possible. Get all the information from your title company, and then they can start that process for you guys. Yes.
Do you mean like once we get the ERS or once it's posted?
So you can send it as soon as you do the ERS. If you want to wait till it's on the MLS, you can do that as well. But as soon as you have that agreement signed and you have the listing, I highly recommend to get over, especially if it's a common name or if it's a business or an entity. So that way the title team can be prepared. There's a lot of things, especially when there's a trust or an entity that title needs in order to process title. So it just helps speed it along. And like I said, with how fast those are closing, the 21-day turnaround times, it's really beneficial for you, and it kind of makes it stronger for the process. Cool. Any other questions? Nope. Okay, cool. You know how to contact me if you guys have any questions. And then tomorrow, if you guys are here, we're going to talk about the life of the transaction. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you guys later. Thanks.
All right. So, so we're going to talk today about listing presentation. So here's where we're going to start, though, is ultimately your job in terms of real estate is really just to be a leader. And in fact, if you didn't learn anything else from what I teach in the classes, but you came away from it learning that your job is to be a leader. And leadership is about asking people to take the next relevant step. And if you would just keep that in mind, that's ultimately what your job is. Your job is to get people who are thinking about doing something real estate related, but have not made a decision necessarily to do it, to get them to take the steps to get to where they then are buying or selling a property. Ultimately, that's your job, is about leadership. Now, the number one skill that a leader has is communication. So your number one skill to work on is just your communication skills and the way that you get people to take action. So ultimately, think of it that way, is in terms of what we're trying to do is get people to take action, and we're going to invite them to take the next relevant step. Don't get so caught up in them buying a house. And in fact, we talked last week, I think it was, we talked about that phone call that I did when I was in California with Jesse, where I took over the call, and then how after at the end of the call that Jesse had said, or no, sorry, that was a different one. It was a different, the first day that I was making calls, I had called and set an appointment, and he said that guy didn't sound very motivated. He didn't sound like he was ready to take action. See, and for me, I'm not so worried that they're ready to buy a house tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. That's not what my concern is. My concern is, can I get them to take the first relevant step? Now, what's the first relevant step that I want them to take? Thank you. Good job. Yes, it's to set an appointment. That's if I can get them to set an appointment. Now, if they set an appointment and then they actually show up for that appointment, so they've set an appointment with them and then they show up. What does that mean if they actually show up to the appointment? Yeah, they're at least interested enough to show up. Now, remember, we talked about connect, create value, close. We're going to talk more about that today, but they showed up because they saw value or they were curious to learn more. Well, that's all that my concern is, because if I recognize my job's about leadership, my job is to get people to take the first relevant step, which is to set an appointment. And then the next relevant step is they show up to the appointment. Then the next relevant step is for me to do what we talked about the last 2 days, which is I'm going to take them through that needs analysis process to find out and try to cause them to do what? Good job. I got one person. So that was awesome. So yeah, to create crystallization, for them. Because when they do, what's going to happen after they crystallize? Yeah, they're empowered to buy, or in this case, what we're going to talk about today, which is sell. So that just takes, so think of it as all your job is with people when you're calling on the phone is not to get them to buy a house tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. That's not your job, or to sell. But your job is just to get them to set an appointment to meet with you. And if they'll do that and meet with you, then you gives you the opportunity to do this needs analysis, which is going to create then this crystallization to occur, which then has them say, yeah, maybe I should sell my house, or maybe I should go buy a new property. So just keep in mind, your job is really about leadership. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, with that as kind of the backdrop, let me get my screen share and stuff going up here again so you guys can see it. All right. So there are two parts. So we're talking today about listing presentation, because here's the thing. The name of this game, real estate, that we're in, at the end of the day, it is about listings. So keep in mind that even though a lot of you guys are working buyers, and that's a normal thing, meaning when we first start in the business, if you were to come to me and say, I'm thinking about doing real estate, tell me what the process is going to look like. Here's what I would tell you, is start by working buyers. And that's the process to begin with, is you're going to start by working buyers. And over time, so let's assume this is 100% buyers that I'm doing. Over time, you're going to slowly inch your way to where, if this is the middle, then I'm doing like 50% buyers and 50% listings. Then over time, you're going to get to where eventually you're over here where you're doing 100% listings and very few buyers. That's kind of the process that you're going to go through typically. Now, not always, but most people, that's what this is going to look like, is you just start over here working with the buyers. And I don't know why this is, but just as a general rule, people will trust a newer agent more as a buyer than the seller, even though it's the same contract. And to some extent, representing the buyer, you're the one creating the contract. Now, the listing side obviously has to review it and make sure that, fix errors that the buyer's agent makes. But at the end of the day, I don't understand why, but it's just the way it is. People will trust you to represent them as a buyer, as a newer agent, when maybe they won't as a listing agent. In fact, I had an agent who's been in the business, I don't remember how long she told me, 16 years, that I was talking to yesterday. And she even said, she was complaining that her family doesn't trust her to list their homes. They'll let her help buy, but they, for whatever reason, don't want her to be the one representing on the sale. It doesn't make any sense to me. But just so my point of saying is just recognize that's what it looks like. Okay. Now, with that being said, then, so now listings is the name of the game of where you eventually want to get to, is where you're mostly doing listings, because as you can see in the market today, what is controlling the market? Could you imagine, in fact, you guys tell me, could you imagine what would life be like today if there were like 3 times as many homes for sale on your team? How many more transactions would you guys be doing right now?
Oh, way more. We focus a lot on listings, so we want to be more active. Right now, for everyone is low inventory.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, when the market opens, from last 2 years, and 2 years.
Yeah. So really, at the end of the day, the truth is you need a listing and a buyer, because I've been here in this business in times where at one point, in fact, how do you guys know, and I apologize for you guys in California, I don't know the numbers there like I do here, but in Salt Lake, any idea how many homes are for sale in Salt Lake right now? Ballpark?
1,800.
In just Salt Lake?
The whole state is 1,800. But yeah, what about Salt Lake? That's the Salt Lake County.
Or something.
Yeah, it's right around 500 homes for sale. Like, it's crazy. I remember a time back in 2000, and it was either 9 or 10. I'll have to look back and see. I think it was 9. But in 2009, there were in Salt Lake County, so just Salt Lake County, 8,800 homes for sale. So just kind of know we're going to have the whole spectrum. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, the people who understand what I'm going to teach you today in terms of working listings, even if we had 8,800 homes for sale in Salt Lake County, which when that was happening, like, home prices were doing the opposite of what they're doing right now. And in fact, I'll share with you guys a story today about a listing and going through the process that we're going to talk about back in, it was I should look back. It was either 2009 or 2010 where we were chasing the market down versus today we're chasing the market up. Meaning, you know, look at these crazy offers that are bid 40, 50,000. Like I've got a listing in North Salt Lake right now that we have nobody even submitted an offer at list price, which it's crazy because the very first offer we got, and we had no other offers, was $50,000 above the list price. And we hadn't, at that point, we'd had no offers even yet. Like it's crazy. But the market will do the opposite though, at some point where it will have so many homes for sale that if you aren't good at pricing, you're going to struggle in the market. So I'm going to teach you today how to not do that, even though we don't need it today, but I'm going to take you through it. All right. So with all that being said, here's where we're going to start with. Okay. So your job is to be a leader. Now, here's the first thing we're going to do. So in terms of you and doing a listing presentation, there are two parts to a listing presentation. Okay. So there's two pieces to this. The first side is choose me. The other side is price. Okay. Or have they chosen me? You could think of it that way too, right? So there are two parts to a listing. The first part of it is to get them to choose me, or have they chosen you? Okay. Okay. It's two O's, right? Choose.
Shows. I put two up the pen.
Choose is two O's, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like looking at that going, let me fix that. We'll do it this way. My handwriting's bad enough, but then I have to try to do it on the iPad, so I apologize. But so there's two parts to the listing presentation. The first part is choose me. The first thing you've got to do. Now, so remember, we just talked about your job in real estate is really to get people to take the next relevant step, whatever that is. It's not to get them to buy or sell a house tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. It's to get them to take the next step. Well, in terms of a listing, what your job is on the listing is to get them to choose you. So before we worry about anything else, the first thing we have to worry about is, have they chosen me? Did they choose to work with me? Okay. Now I'm going to give to you here, there are 6 things that you need to do in order to get somebody to choose you. And then I'm going to give you these 6 things. We're going to talk about the difference between that and price for a second. And then we're going to jump into, okay, what should the listing presentation look like? Probably the number one question that I get in the 15, 16 years now that I have been training real estate agents, probably the number one question that I get asked is, I need a good listing presentation. And typically what people mean by that when they say I need a good listing presentation is they want a printout of something that they could take and go give to a seller. That's what they think a listing presentation is. But that's not a listing presentation. And in fact, I would say it this way. You are the listing presentation. So you don't need all the stuff. Now, you can get the stuff, and we'll talk about that in a different class. In the technology class, we'll hit on, so where do you go to get if you want to have a good printout to take with you. But that's not what we're talking about today, because you are the listing presentation, okay? So as you go through this process, keep in mind that what your objective is, the first thing you're trying to do as you are working a listing presentation is to get them to choose you, okay? So the first thing that's going to happen, and some of this will sound familiar, but the first thing that's got to happen is I've got to have a connection or / some rapport built, okay? So I've got to have a connection / rapport. You've got to, so no different than what we talked about in terms of our prospecting, that you've got to create a connection. Well, same thing on a listing presentation. There's got to be a connection or some rapport built with this seller or these potential sellers, or they're not going to choose you. Okay, so, and I'll show you how we're going to do all of this as we go through it. Number 2, the second thing that has to happen is that they have to trust you. Okay, so the second thing that has to happen is we've got to create some trust where they will, well, what are you doing? Oh, so the second thing that's got to happen is you've got to create some trust. They have to trust you. Okay, now the third thing then, after they trust you, and these are related, number 2 and 3 are related, but as a result of them trusting you, they then will feel safe. So the third thing that has to happen is they have to feel safe. Now, by them trusting you, them feeling like they can trust you will allow them to feel safe. Once people feel safe, they will allow you to lead them. See, I think about, for me, if I go walking into any place where there's a quote unquote salesperson, for me, my guard is usually up until I feel like, okay, they're not just trying to make a sale, they're actually listening to me and want to hear what I have to say. Then I will, when I feel safe, I will allow them then to help me through the process. See, that's no different than how any other seller is as well, is they have to feel safe or they're not going to allow you to lead them. Okay. So number 4, the next thing that has to happen is we have to create value, which, so like I said, a lot of this stuff is going to sound similar to what we've already worked on, but we have to create value for them. Okay. So you got to do something to create value. And the way that we're going to do that is through number 5 is we have to separate ourselves. So I'm going to say separate yourself. Okay. So you got to separate yourself from the competition. And so I probably should reverse those and have separate yourself be number 4 and number 5 be create value. But either way, they're kind of, think of it as trust and safe could be interchangeable, and separate yourself and create value. Here's why. In the consumer's mind, there's no difference between you and any other agent out there. See, the reason that, I don't know if I should say any names of brokerages. The reason there's a brokerage that has billboards all up and down I-15 that are green, does that give it away?
Yeah.
The reason that brokerage exists is because the consumer does not see the value in an agent. In their mind, you're no different than anybody else out there. And in fact, I actually, and I think I've shared this with you guys before, but I have a neighbor that is an appraiser, went and got his real estate license, came through the trainings, and after coming through the trainings, he now currently will go out and list pretty much any house out there for 1%. And he's told me, I just don't see, we don't do enough. This is his exact words. As agents, we don't do enough work for the client to make it worth them paying 3%. Go ahead, Chewy.
Yeah, it depends on how, what you believe, how much you work, how much time is worth. Whatever you believe is what you're going to transfer to the other person. If you don't believe you're not for nothing, then they won't pay you.
Yeah, so yeah, in fact, and I don't know the answer to this question. So, so Chewy runs a team, him and Lou Tran, which she gets all the credit, right? But, but if you've heard of Lou Tran, they run, their team is La Chinita, which she's not Chinese, but but she's Asian. But in Spanish, La Chinita is
The Asian lady.
what?
The Asian lady.
The Asian lady, yeah. So, but they run a team, and how much did you guys do last year? You know?
How much we,
Yeah, like gross commission.
uh,
Ballpark? How many homes did you sell?
114.
Okay, so like they know what they're doing, right? So that's why I'm kind of picking on him a little bit. I didn't ask him to come, but I'm glad you're here. But what commission do you guys usually charge?
7%.
Now, notice there was not even a hesitation in that.
10% plus 995.
Yeah, that's I was just gonna say that. And what is an admin fee?
995.
See, they charge a 7% commission and $9.95 and did 114 transactions last year. So don't get caught up in this, you know, people won't pay a commission, because they will. The key is what we're talking about here is you got to be able to just separate yourself and create some value. If they see the value, they'll pay. See, and the proof of that for me, just to kind of help you guys, anytime if you start to feel like, bless you, that you, and this is nothing to sneeze at, by the way, but I'm just kidding. So the thing to keep in mind is if you start to question it and start to feel like my neighbor that's the appraiser that says, well, I just don't think we don't do enough to make it worth the time, then number 1, raise your level of service that you provide is the first thing I would say. And then the second thing, though, that I would say is take a look in the parking lot. There are some, and don't be offended if, well, actually, I will make sure to choose a car that none of you drive, but most of you probably have never heard of either. But a Yugo. Did anybody not know what a Yugo is? All right. So I don't even know when they were built. What, in the 70s maybe? Yeah, but they were like basically, do you know what a Geo Metro is?
Yeah.
They were kind of like the first Geo Metro. Like it was a lawnmower as an engine for a car, basically. But here's the thing: there are people where there are cars sitting out in our parking lot right now that are probably worth $80,000. I don't know. Why would anybody pay $80,000 for a car when you could go buy just I don't know, what's a cheap car? I'll let you guys be the bad guy. A Toyota Corolla. Okay, good. Yeah, my second son just bought one of those actually. But why would somebody go spend $80,000 or $100,000 on a car? Or if we start getting into some of the luxury ones, the real, Lamborghini and stuff, why would somebody spend $200,000 on something that a Toyota Corolla would do the job for? I mean,
Identify with it.
okay, good. Say, why else?
You get more power, more speed, more luxury.
Okay, but it does the same
Higher
thing.
quality.
It's their dream car.
Perceived value.
Okay, at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's perceived value, right? But if you stop and look at it, does a Toyota Corolla accomplish the same thing that now again, if you go to what we just talked about the last 2 days and those 15 benefit words that we talked about, then no, it might not. But at the end of the day, as far as if you look at from getting from point A to point B, you might not do it as fast in a Toyota Corolla as a Lamborghini, but you still get there and it works. So why do people go and spend the money on a Mercedes or a Lexus or whatever? What?
The quality of the car.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's they see the value, right? So it's no different in terms of a seller that you're working with. If they see the value in what you're providing, they'll pay. All right. So number 6. Oops. Number 6 on here is then you have to close. So the 6 things that have to happen. Now, just to really drive the point home on this, in terms of you getting a listing, these 6 things have to take place in order for them to choose you. The very first thing that you need to be concerned about in working with a seller is, have they chosen me? Do not talk price until they've chosen you. Did I say that stern enough? Do not talk price. So Trevor, you're on calling for sale by owners. How often do they ask you, what are you going to charge me as a commission? On the phone.
I've heard it actually probably like 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
No, actually, I just wanted it.
They're going to ask quite often. So how are you going to respond? Because what I just said is, do not talk price. Don't give them a price until they've chosen you. So how are you going to handle it? Somebody says to you, Trevor.
I honestly would just close. Like after that, I would be like, awesome. That's an awesome question. That's why we need to meet and kind of get together and kind of go close.
Okay, good. And so let's role play it. Okay, so you're asking me. So I'm the for sale by owner. Okay, Trevor. So how much is your commission going to be?
You know what, Russ? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. That's actually exactly why we need to get to meet. What works better for you, afternoons or evenings?
Well, evenings, but I want to know, would you do it for 4%?
See, that's the difference between me and like other agents. Other agents might negotiate that more with you, but we're more kind of like a standard thing. But what I'm trying to do right now is just get information.
So what I'm hearing is no.
Right now. Thanks.
Okay, so here's the thing. Even from that standpoint, don't talk price. Because here's the problem. Within that role play scenario, what I heard is this for sale by owner is, you're not going to come down to 4%, in which case I'm not going to meet with you. Now, why is that a problem?
Because he already decided right there on the phone not to give you an appointment. It's no longer worth this time.
That's right. In essence, here's what, and I know I'm picking on you a little bit, Trevor, but it's to make you better.
Do it.
You started talking price
Right.
by saying,
Well, no.
people will negotiate on their commission, but we won't. See, what I heard was, oh, okay, so you're not going to come down on your price. I don't want to meet with you. See, the reason we don't want to talk price is because until they have chosen me, in their mind, you're no different. See, that's why I went in that role play. That's why are you going to do it for 4%? And so how do you respond? How should you respond then?
You can say, you know what, I'm gonna do it for free until I get you what you want.
Okay, good. That could be a good answer. But if I'm the for sale by owner, I'm going to go, okay, but once you get me what I want, what are you going to charge me? Hello? Did we lose our connection?
What do you say? Sorry. Ultimately, Rick, what I'm hearing you say is
I'm Russ, but that's good.
In my brain, I'm talking to Rick right now. In my brain, I'm like, what is
I know.
This is
It's role play with Rick. I
Ultimately,
know.
Russ, what I'm hearing you say is you want the maximum amount of money back in your pocket.
Absolutely.
Okay, so afternoon, JP, because I'm going to get you that, and we'll discuss that afterwards.
Okay, good. So here's the key thing. What you want to do is just do not commit to a price, but you got to give them something, right? So for me, here's how I like to say it is I say it. So if we reverse the roles, so Trevor, you asked me.
Are you going to charge me like just 4%? Like, are you going to come down on commission?
So it sounds to me like what you're worried about is netting the most amount of money, right?
Right.
Well, the good news is, Trevor, if I were you, I would feel the exact same way. And so the beautiful thing is, I actually need to hear what it is you want to accomplish, because my commission actually ranges from 0 to 10%. And what I need to do is find out what's going to be best for you. So what works best, afternoons or evenings? See, the reason I'm going to do that, I'm going to give a range, and my range, I'm going to say from 0 to 10%. Now, how's it going to be 0?
You're on your own.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not going to help you. So I'm going to show up for the appointment and not charge you for it. So there's 0 cost if we don't work together. That's kind of how so for me, that's why I say my fees could be from 0 to 10%. See, it'll be 0 if we end up not working together. So but in order for me to know that, I got to come out and talk to you first. Now, then when I go out and talk to them, now I have the chance to do this stuff here we're talking about. Does that make sense? So your job is to just get the appointment so you can go out there and create this so that they'll choose you. Because until they choose you, they are concerned about price. Once now I've gotten them to say, hey, I want to work with this person, now we can start to talk price. So same thing. So now I get out on the listing. I show up out there. And when I get there, they say to me, okay, you said the first thing, because sometimes what agents will say is this. Some agents will say to the seller, that'll be the first thing we discuss when I get out to your house. So now I show up, I get to the house, and they say, okay, so you said the first thing we were going to discuss was commission. How are you going to respond? Because remember, we don't talk price until they've chosen me. So
Don't say that in the first place.
so, okay, so maybe don't say that then, okay. But if you did, which I'm okay with it, I'm okay with saying, and I've said that before to for sale by owners, hey, that'll be it sounds like you're worried about the commission. If I were you, I would be too. I'm going to always use the empathy. Hey, if I were you, I'd be concerned too. That'll be the first thing we talk about. Okay, great. So now I show up. You're the seller, or I'm the seller, and I say to you, okay, great. You said the first thing we were going to talk about was commission. So should we talk about commission?
Yeah, sign right here. We'll talk about it.
Trevor's answer is sign here. Okay. So I'm not going to do price till they've chosen me. So how are you going to respond?
Let them know you'll get to it in a second and kind of go over everything, and then at the end just toss it in there.
Okay, good. So here's how I would respond is what I would want to say to them is, okay, hey, yes, I want to talk about that first. But again, before we get into that, I first need to find out what is most important to you. And then from there, I can jump into the listing presentation, which we're about to get into now. I just really have to emphasize this part before we go on, that don't talk price until they've chosen you. Once they've chosen you, now you can talk price. But until then, we're not going to talk price. So no matter what, as we go through what I'm going to talk about with you on the listing presentation now, as we go through this process, at any point, if the seller were to say to you, okay, but so what's your commission going to be, Alja?
Let's talk about that later.
See, the hard part is you can't say, let's talk about it later, because if I'm the consumer, I feel like you're afraid of it, which scares me. So again, at any point through it, I would kind of say, hey, we're almost there. I just got a few more questions that I need to ask you. And then I can figure out what's going to be best, because I heard what you said on the phone that you wanted to net the most amount of money. So I got to figure out how we're going to do that. And in order to do that, I got to ask you a number of questions. Okay. So no different than the permission script we did yesterday, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions. Same kind of concept. Hey, I need to ask you a number of questions to find out what's going to be most important to help you get what it is you want. Then we'll talk commission. Because until I know that, I don't know what the commission is going to be. All right, so here we go. So the first thing that we're going to do on enlisting presentation, when you get to the house, now here's what I recommend. In terms of getting to their property, get there early. Show up a little bit early. What you don't want to do is be late to this appointment, first off. So get there early. What do you do if you show up 15 minutes early? Don't go knock on the door 15 minutes early. But I would say go drive around the neighborhood, get a feel for the neighborhood. Like, for example, my first house that I lived in, if I was going to be listing that home, I would have wanted to know, okay, because there was these brand new houses here, and then across the street was a bunch of older homes. And to get to that neighborhood, there was two ways you could get in there. One was going through the old houses, which I'm like, oh, I wouldn't want to do that. I would want to bring the people through the other way, which brings them right into the neighborhood, so they don't drive through the older homes, because the older ones at that time didn't look very good. So to some extent, I want to drive the neighborhood a little bit to get kind of a feel of what are the homes that are for sale. I mean, now to some extent, you should already know that, but from doing your CMA. But I at least want to kind of drive around and kind of get a feel. Are there some for sale by owners that maybe I wasn't aware of? Because I would want to call and talk to that for sale by owner to find out kind of a price, because I want to be the expert when I show up for that seller. Okay. So drive around, kind of get a feel for the neighborhood. Are there things that would be plus? Are there some negatives? So I just want to find that out. Okay. So now that I'm there though, so now it's time to go into the property. Here's one of the things that I like to do is, for me personally, if I wasn't an agent and I had one coming to the house, I'm going to be a little nervous. I don't know about you guys, but if I was not a real estate agent and I had one coming over to my house, like I've lived there for 20 years now, so it would have been 20 years since I've done anything with an agent. Well, I would probably be a little bit nervous. Well, as a result of that, just for how I am, I probably would be kind of keep looking out the window of the front window of like, are they here yet? And trying to kind of keep an eye that way. So here's what I like to do. I just assume that most people are kind of watching for you that way. Now, probably not all are, but there are going to be some that do. So here's what I like to do. When I get out of the car, I don't get out and just walk straight up to the door. I usually will have a clipboard with me with a paper on it or whatever. And usually I have a printout of a previous MLS if it has been listed before. And then what I like to do is I get out of the car and I look at the house as if like I'm checking out the house to see, and I'll maybe even make a note about what the roof looks like or the curb appeal or, whatever. Does the flowers look good or whatever? I'll make a note or two. The idea behind that for me is if they're standing in there looking out the window to see if you're there, the first thing they're noticing me is getting out and taking some notes about the house. Okay. So I want them to see me taking some notes if they're looking. If they're not, then, oh, well, it didn't matter. But I'm going to kind of take a few notes. Then I go up and I'm not going to knock on the door. And you can knock however you want, but I have even when I was I don't know if I should tell you guys this, but even when I was door knocking, like every day, the knock that I always use is, and it's amazing how many times somebody will come up and go, and then open the door. See, to some extent, even for me, that when I was out just door knocking is kind of sending a message of what? What's of what?
Friendly.
Yeah, of hey, I'm friendly and I'm have fun and I'm here to hey. And I can't tell you how many times people would walk up and go, and then open the door, which told me that they were going to be pleasant to talk to. Now, a lot of times they were then surprised of like, oh, they thought they knew who I was. But so for me, same thing on a listing. I'm going to walk up and knock on the door like that. Okay. So now you don't have to do that. I'm getting a little probably more detailed than necessarily I need to, but for me, that's the way I do it. Okay. Now, when they open the door and I'm going to introduce myself, they invite me in. Okay. As I come in, then the next thing that I'm going to do is is what we call TAP. So TAP is an acronym for thank, acknowledge, and promise. Okay, so I'm going to thank, acknowledge, and promise. So the first thing I'm going to do when I get in the house is just, hey, thank you for taking the time to meet with me. So I'm going to thank them for that. I'm going to acknowledge them. Now, remember I said the first thing I'm doing when I get out of the car is I'm going to write down some notes, and I'm looking for something that's like good about the property, but also kind of looking at, hey, how's the roof? Is I want to acknowledge them. So part of what I want to do is I want to be like, wow, I noticed that flower bed that you have out in front that, man, it's just amazing. Like something like that. Wait, acknowledge that, you know, the curb appeal looks great, or the color of your door. I love how you painted that color, or whatever, but acknowledge something good about the property. Now, what if there is nothing good?
Make it up.
Why? Yeah, if there is nothing good, this is the one that you call me, not Chewy, about to come and buy to fix up and flip, right, Chewy?
Right.
Call me, not you. You're like, okay. So, okay, so acknowledge something, okay? So acknowledge something about the property. If there's nothing to acknowledge, then instead, after that, what I want you to acknowledge is just their time. So if you pull up and the house is like, it's a hoarder house, you know, you're not gonna be like, wow, I love what you've done with all the boxes and, you know.
I love this
I
room.
love a good box.
So, but acknowledge their time then. Just, hey, I know you're busy. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me, okay? And then the final thing is the promise. Give them a promise. Hey, especially like since I've been talking to Trevor on for sale by owners, I know it is hot in here. It's not as bad as it was the past 2 days, I don't think.
There's all these
Today's, I
people,
don't know, today I think longer than
Do
yesterday.
you think it is?
body
Yesterday
heat.
was.
I'm still trying to,
Yeah, there's also more.
maybe it is.
Just get a fan.
I don't know, it did kind of cool off though as we got going yesterday, I felt like, but I don't know.
You're the biggest guy here, how are you cold?
No, it feels good on my old man joints.
You're liking it, huh? Okay. So give them some type of a promise. So what I want to do is I just want to promise them that whether we end up working together or not, that they're going to find value in what we talk about. So that's what the promise is, just, hey, you know, I'm not sure if we're going to end up with us working together or me helping you. You could say, you know, me helping you and getting your home sold. But here's what I will promise you. I'm going to give you some information that is going to be well worth the time that we spent together today. And depending on you, I usually throw in some humor on that. So now, depending on the person that I'm meeting with, like if it's somebody I don't know at all, I usually will throw in some humor of like this. So this is what it would sound like. So, hey, thanks for taking the time to meet with me today. And wow, I noticed when I pulled up how awesome the front of your property looks. That's going to make getting your home sold so much easier. So great job on all the effort you've put into the outside of your home. And here's the thing. I promise you, like in the next 4 hours as we talk, by the time I'm done, I'm going to give you some really good information. And you guys didn't even flinch. Like usually I'm saying like, hey, in the next 4 hours when I get done with talking to you, is typically they're going to have some like a shocked look on their face, especially if you've told them, hey, we'll be 20 or 30 minutes. And they're like, 4 hours? So then I'm just kidding, you know? So I will say that to kind of just lighten the mood a little bit. If I can tell they're nervous, then I might be like, hey, 4 hours when I get done showing you how I get a home sold, you're going to have some great information. And like I say, sometimes they'll be like, 4 hours? I'm just kidding. So I'm just looking for kind of a shocked look. But so you don't have to do that. But if you want to throw some humor in, throw some humor in. Okay. All right. So I'm going to thank, acknowledge, promise. Now, so the next thing that I'm going to do here, so I'm going to just put a line through here. I don't know why I do it this way, but I do. The next thing that I'm going to do is look at the house. Okay. So I'm going to go look at the house. Now, there are two ways you can go about this, and you are going to have to decide which route you want to follow on this. But what I mean is on this look at the house, I'm either going to have them show me through the house, or I'm going to say, I want to discover the home through the eyes of a buyer. And so let me walk through it without you going with me. So either way, now you decide. I'll give you the advantages and disadvantages. And for me, there are times where I do one or the other. So I'm not exclusive to, I always look at it by myself. or I always have them show me through the property. I will do one or the other, and some of it depends on, actually, let me tie this together for you. Remember back here, it's about, the first thing that's got to happen is a connection or rapport. If I feel like I don't have a good connection or rapport with them, like if over the phone, or if it's somebody I know that I do have a good connection and rapport with, I'm probably going to say I want to go look at the house on my own. If I need to build some more connection or rapport with the people, I am going to 100% say, show me through the property. So I usually say to them, hey, will you give me the grand tour? Show me around and tell me about the property. So I'm going to do that if I need the connection. If I don't need the connection, or if I'm in a little bit of a rush. So again, going back to a for sale by owner and expired, Trevor, if for some reason I had said to them, hey, I'll be 15, 20 minutes for this appointment, then I'm not going to have them show me through the property because I'm not going to be able to do it in that amount of time. So just if I'm short on time, I won't have them show me through the property. If I need the connection, I'm 100% going to have them show me through the property as a way to get that connection, to talk to them. Make sense? And then as they show me through the property and they talk, I'm going to, oh, whose idea was this? Oh, that was a great idea. Stuff like that to build some connection or rapport with them. Okay. So I'm going to go look at the house. And if I don't want them to go with me, then I'm going to say, I want to look at your home and explore or discover. Sometimes I'll say it that way. I want to discover your home through the eyes of a buyer. I want to see it the way that a buyer is going to see it. And then I'll say, so you wait here, and then, the kitchen or whatever, let me just walk through it real quick, because I want to see it without you giving me the tour. I want to see it the way a buyer is going to. Okay. Now that I've done that. So now we come back. Now, some people will say you should sit at the kitchen table. Others would say go sit in the family room on the couch, whatever. I personally doesn't care. Whatever is works. Okay. You'll have some people that will say, ask them to get you a drink of water so that it kind of puts them into the mode of serving you, which that's fine if you want to do that too. But for me, the next piece of this, so after the tap, the thank, acknowledge, promise, I'm going to go look at the property either with or without them. Then number two, the second thing that I'm going to do, and I will call this a few different things. Sometimes I will call it the map, or actually, yeah, that's fine. Typically I will call it more often than not the game plan, or you could think of it as an overview. Now, here's what I mean. And in fact, I forgot. I usually like to start this class like this, and I just realized I didn't do it. So pretend that we're just barely starting class. We haven't talked about anything yet, okay? Sometimes the way I'll start this class is I will start it by saying, okay, guys, hey, at some point today, a bus is going to pull out front. And when the bus shows up, then we're all going to go down the elevator, get on the bus, and go on a field trip. If I had started the class that way, what would you guys be either thinking in your mind, or what would you ask me?
Where are we going? How long?
That's right. Notice that. Okay. Okay. So notice that. Notice that the first thing you would have thought is, so where are we going? People like to know where they're going. Okay. So what I want to do on a listing presentation, after I've thanked, acknowledged, promised, I've looked at the house, the next thing I want to do is give them an overview, or I want to tell them, hey, let me tell you what we're going to talk about. Here's the game plan for what we're going to be doing today. Something like that, okay? Is I want to give them, here's the game plan. Here's how we're going to go about this. Because I want them to know what it's going to look like. Because again, most of the time, these people are probably a little bit nervous because they don't know what this process looks like. So I just want to give them an overview, okay? So there's 4 things that I'm going to tell them about first, okay? So the first one is we're going to talk about their needs, their wants, and their expectations. So needs, wants, and expectations, okay? Now I'll give you kind of the language that I'm going to use as I explain it to them, but I first want to just give you the 4 things that we're going to talk about, okay? And at this point, I'm not actually talking about their needs, wants, and expectations. I'm just telling them this is what we're going to talk about. So no different than if we started class and I said, okay, At some point during class, I'm going to get notified that there's a bus here. We're going to all go get on the bus, and then we're going to go on a field trip. Like, we aren't going on the field trip. I'm just telling you at the start, right? That's the same thing here. This overview is just, we're not doing it yet. I'm just telling them we're going to do it. Okay. All right. So then B. B is, or number 2, either way you want to call it. The next thing we're going to talk about is the market, or well, let me rephrase that. I hate using the word marketing, but
Advertising strategy.
yeah. Ultimately, I'll let me tie it back to you. Let me show you actually. Let me do it this way. The needs, wants, and expectations is all about the connection, getting them to trust me and to feel safe. Okay. The next piece of this that we're talking about here on this is I'm gonna write it down as marketing, but it's not really marketing the way you think of marketing. So, and the reason I say that is I'm probably going to explain it to the seller this way. First, we're going to talk about what your needs, your wants, and ultimately your expectations of me would be. And I'll share with you what I would expect from you as a seller. And then after that, we're going to talk about what do I do to get a home sold. So see, I'm writing it down here as marketing, but it's not really about marketing, because I'm not going to talk to them about, well, we put your home on 800 websites and we, are the most recognized brand in real estate and only second to Coke. And thankfully Coke doesn't sell real estate because people recognize Coke more. But that's not what I mean by marketing. What I mean by marketing though is, what am I going to do to get a home sold? And it's not necessarily going to be about the how many websites we put it on. And I'll show you what that looks like when we get to it. Okay. All right. So then C, what we're going to talk about then is the market. And I'll show you more on this too as we get to it. But ultimately, when I say the market, what I'm going to talk to them about, in fact, if I were to ask you guys right now, what is going on in the market today? If I wasn't an agent, I just flew in from Australia, and I asked you guys, hey, so what's going on with the real estate market today? How would you answer?
Low inventory, great interest rates,
So low inventory, great interest rates.
which causes low inventory because everybody's.
Okay, good. So ultimately, that's what I'm talking about on the market piece, is we're going to talk to them about the general market. So think of it this way. We'll do this as letter I guess here, is we're going to talk about the macro. So the big picture of the market. Then we're going to talk to them about pricing and how that affects them. Basically how what's going on in the market is going to affect their pricing. And then the third thing is the CMA. Okay. And then letter D here is going to be close. Now let me show you what that looks like. Okay. So check. We'll assume that I came to meet with you as the seller. So I show up, hey, thanks for meeting with me. Wow, your curb appeal looks great. And I promise you I'm going to give you some good information. Let me take a look at your house. I go look at the house, come back. I say, okay, Chad, here's what we're going to do is I just want to give you an overview of what we're going to talk about. So the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about and ask you a number of questions about your needs, your wants, and what you would expect from me as a seller. And then I'll share with you what I would expect from you as a seller as well. And then after that, I want to just talk about what do I do to get a home sold? What makes me different? Now, remember, we got to do those 6 things. So I got to create some value and I want to separate myself. So I'm even just going to say, after that, we're going to talk about what do I do to get a home sold and what makes me different than every other agent out there, because not all agents are created the same. After we've talked about that, then we're going to talk about what's going on in the market today and how does what's going on in the market today affect your price of your home, and ultimately what is the value of your home is what we're going to talk about. And then after that, Chad, if you're comfortable and confident that I'm the one you want to work with in getting your home sold, then I'm just going to ask you to sign some paperwork. Okay.
Sounds good.
So that's what this number 2 looks like, is I'm just saying, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about your needs, wants, and expectations. We're going to talk about what do I do to get a home sold. We're going to talk about the market and how that's going to affect the price of your home and what we should list your home for. And then we're going to, after that, if you're comfortable and confident that I'm the right agent, I'm just going to ask you to sign some paperwork. Okay. See, and I'll say it that way because it makes it feel like that's the hard part. Then I'll ask you to sign some paperwork and we'll get your home sold. And they're going to go. And then I always say, okay. And they say, okay. So that's how it works. All right. Everybody good on that? Clear? No questions? Okay. So then number 3. So now let me get a new page going here. Then number 3. So number 3 now. So for some reason, and I'm still trying to figure out like how I get you guys lost in this. So I'm going to try a new approach today. What I mean by that is right here, we're only talking about this is what we're going to do. We haven't done it. But for some reason, when I go to number 3, people are like, well, wait, I thought we did that in number 2. So number 2 is just, here's what we're going to do. So number 3 now, and maybe it's the way I number them, or not number them, but call it. So number 3, here's how I'm going to do it. Number 3 is now going to be needs, wants, expectations. So we're actually going to do it now, okay? Now, here's the way that I like to think about it is that I'm just going to ask them a bunch of questions. Okay? Now, so you remember yesterday we talked about the directives and how we would start with describe for me your ideal home? Yeah.
So this is just after you say you signed the exclusive right to sell. This is like putting action to, putting.
Yeah, no, good question. No, this is actually, we have not signed anything yet. So the last thing I've said to him is if you're comfortable with everything we're about to talk about, then I'm going to ask you to sign, and they say, okay, now we're going to go in and start talking about the needs wants. Does that make sense? So let me show you. In fact, tell me your name. Aiden. Okay. So Aiden, thanks for having me over. I really appreciate it. I love what you've done to the house. Like, you've done a good job of getting it ready to sell. Most sellers don't do that. So this is where I'm acknowledging most sellers aren't going to do that. And so I appreciate how much effort you put into it. I promise you, whether we end up working together or not, I'm going to give you some good information today. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me take a quick look at the home and then we'll get started. So I go look at the house, come back. Hey, that's awesome. So I just want to kind of give you an overview of what we're going to do. So first, I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions to find out what your needs, wants, and expectations are. And then after that, I'm going to share with you what do I do to get a home sold? What makes me different than everyone else out there? And then after that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what's going on in the real estate market. And I'm going to show you how that affects the price of your home and ultimately what you could sell your home for. And then if you're comfortable and confident in everything I have to say, then I'm going to just ask you to sign some paperwork, okay?
All right.
Perfect. So let's do this. Tell me what it is you're ultimately wanting to accomplish in the sale of your home. So what I just did here is the first question as part of number 3. Okay, so that's the process. Is I'm just going to say, hey, so Aiden, tell me what is it that you're ultimately wanting to accomplish in the sale of your home. So I'm just asking the question, and I may say it as, hey, describe for me what you're ultimately wanting to accomplish, or share with me what you're ultimately wanting to accomplish. Tell me but it's a directive, okay? So I'm having, hey, share with me ultimately what you're wanting to accomplish in getting your home sold. He's then going to start to tell me. Now, no different than what we did yesterday. Think of it as having this box with these grids, this grid on it, is essentially I'm going to start filling out the grid. Now, the only difference of doing this with a seller versus a buyer. With the buyer, we were saying, describe for me your ideal home. And then from there, we would start filling in these boxes based on what the features they talked about. Well, with the seller, the difference on a seller is you're going to have to ask more questions to fill the grid. So you're going to say, hey, share with me or tell me about what it is you're ultimately wanting to accomplish in the sale of your home. They're going to then start to tell me, well, we got this job transfer, or the house has gotten too small, or it's too big, or what. Like, they're just going to start telling me more about it. As they're telling me about it, then I'm going to use those same things we talked about yesterday. Hey, that's great. Tell me more. So, and I'm just going to try to draw as much information out of them as I can. Now, with a seller, with the buyer, you could say, describe for me your ideal home, and they're going to talk. Hey, that's great, Trevor. What else? And then he's going to talk, and they'll continue to talk and share information with you. With a seller, if I say ultimately, what are you trying to accomplish in the sale of your home? And they say, well, we want to downsize. Okay, well, tell me more. Well, this house has gotten too big and we just feel like we need a smaller. Okay, sure. What else? That's pretty much it. Like that's probably what you're going to get out of them. Okay. So as a result, you're going to have to ask other questions. So what are some other questions that we would want to ask a seller at this point? Any thoughts?
Timeline?
Okay, good. Time. So one of the questions that I would throw in here then as well for them is to be about timing. So I would, hey, share with me ultimately what would be the ideal time, or tell me how time is going to affect this, or what you're wanting to accomplish in the timing of getting your home sold, something like that. Make sense? So I'm going to ask that, and then I'm going to just take some notes of whatever they say in terms of the timing. What else would be good?
Location?
Look.
Where they would want to move?
Yeah, where you relocating to, do they need to help in buying a home too?
Okay, good. Yeah, so you may ask that. Now, the only reason I'm a little hesitant on that is probably when I say to them, ultimately, what are you trying to accomplish? They're probably already have told me that. But if they didn't, that would be a great question. So good. What else?
Price exactly what's important. Like, is it money or something else?
Okay. So I'm going to hold that one for 1 second because that's typically, that's usually the second to last question I'm going to ask. Okay. So here's the other things that I will do is I will ask them under this part here of the needs, wants, and expectations, or just the questions piece. I'm going to ask them, sorry, Tristan's throwing a question on here, I think, or a comment. Sorry, I'm not as good with you guys on Zoom of keeping an eye on this. So feel free to unmute and say if they have a place to stay once sold. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's what Swen had said. And I think that's probably going to have come up in the first question, but if not, that would be a good one, Tristan. All right. The next one that I like to ask is I will say, hey, share with me about your past experience working with agents. Because what I want to find out then is, hey, tell me about your past experience working with an agent. And then as they share that to me, I'm going to say, what did they do that you liked? What do you wish they would have done? What do you think they should have done? So I'm just going to ask a bunch of those questions along the lines to figuring out what are they going to expect of me as an agent. Okay. So I like asking that in terms of, tell me about your past experience. Tell me what you would expect, what you liked, what you didn't like. All of those type of questions is what I'm going to be asking them. Okay. Now, after that, then, and actually in your script book, let me see if I have one here. Does everybody have script books? Anybody not have one? I got a whole stack right here, so. Yep. In here, so just so that if you're wondering on your script book, on page, can't remember, let me find it here. (38) On page 38 and 39 is 21 questions for the listing presentation. So it gives you, if you want additional, so I'm not going to go through them all because they're all there in your script book, but 21 questions that you could ask. Now, after you've asked a number of those questions, then I do like to go, Aiden, to the question of, hey, here's how I ask it. How will price affect your decision to list your home? How will price affect your decision to list your home? And the reason I like to ask it as how will price affect your decision is because what I have found is they are either going to talk about the price of their house, if that's what's most important, or they'll talk about the commission if they think that's what's most important.
And you're going to ask this after, like after they talk about just like the experience of their past agent, to say something brings up like, oh, money was a hot topic for them about their last agent. How are you going to word that then? So
yeah, so great question. If they've already brought up money being the hot topic with a previous agent, I wouldn't ask it.
Okay.
Yeah, because we've pretty much already talked about it. If it has come up in one of the other questions, I'll probably just skip it. So yeah,
like entirely, or just kind of like ease it. He's like, oh, you know, understand that your price is a hot topic for you. The way we're gonna structure this or the way we're gonna do this, we're gonna do it in a way that it won't be a problem anymore. So
Yeah,
that's
good.
more or just
So-
totally just
Yeah, great question. What you're asking though is gonna take place at number 4 and I'm not there yet. So that's what I mean, and meaning like with the seller though, that's what I'm saying is if the seller's trying to get, if me asking the question and the seller were to say, ask me a question about pricing again, or the commission or whatever, because of the last agent, I'm going to, almost said deflect, and I don't know if deflect's the right word, but I'm going to say, hey, yep, I promise, as soon as we're done talking about what you're expecting from me, we're gonna get into the commission. Is kind of, because we're, at this point, we're getting really close to it, so I would have no problem of saying to them, hey, we're gonna get there. So yeah. All I'm doing during this number 3 is taking information in. And that's gonna be a challenge for you because you're gonna want to start to answer their questions right then and resolve, any issues or things that come up. But we don't want to do that. All we're doing at this point is absorbing the information. We're having them give me all the information so that I then can know how to do it. Now, let me let me show you why again, just as a reminder. The reason I'm doing all of this is because everything right now, up to this point, what we have been doing is all about connection, trust, and safety. That's it. So far, that's all we are doing is trying to get these 3 things in place. Because remember, I'm not going to talk price and they're not going to list their home with you until they choose you. So for me, all I'm doing is asking all of these questions here as a way to creating the connection, rapport, having them feel safe and to trust me. Okay. So good question. All right. So the last question I'm always going to ask of the seller is, and I don't know if it's in the book. Let me see if it is real quick. I don't think it is. I probably should add it if it's not, but. Number 20 that's in here kind of is, but here's how I do it. I usually just say to them, share with me your biggest concern or your biggest fear in getting your home sold. What is your biggest concern or your biggest fear about this process or getting your home sold, something along those lines? Now, why? Why would I want to ask that question?
So you can address them.
Okay, good. Yeah, I want to be able to address it, but why else? Why would that be such a crucial?
It's pretty broad and it's open-ended. It'll uncover whatever's in their head. I feel like it's not like a direct question, but it's all-encompassing.
Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly right. Is ultimately it's going to allow me to figure out what is going to be the decision-making thing. It's kind of really what it is. Now, and it's gonna if I know what their biggest fear or their biggest concern is, I know how to address it and how to resolve that to fix it. So let me give you a quick example. So when I went through and was being trained on this, this particular information as well, I went to California to be trained on. And there was an agent in the training that had said, the guy that was doing the training said, if you get an opportunity for like a multi-million-dollar property, he said, I will go with you on the listing presentation to help you get the listing. Well, an agent that was in the class said, okay, I've got an opportunity. Now, it didn't happen like in the class that he said I have an opportunity, but afterwards, an agent was in the class, called up the trainer and said, I've got an opportunity to go out on a listing that at that time, now this was, like I say, this was late 99-ish, probably maybe 2000, but so 20 something years ago. At the time, the property was in California. It was worth $15 million at the time. So what, fast forward that to today, it's probably $30-40 million property, okay? So they go out on this listing presentation. And so here's the point of why these questions are so crucial and why you've got to drill down to find out the important and what the concern is. So they go out on this presentation. Now, just to kind of give you a little more background. all the agents in the area were aware this property was coming on the market. And like, if you found out, hey, there's a $15 million property coming on the market, like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm like I'm jumping on to every social media thing to figure out who do I have a connection with that knows these people, like, that I could use to, I want that listing. I don't know about you guys, but so that's kind of what was going on. So this seller, what had happened was her husband had passed away. She had decided the house was too big and she didn't need that much house anymore, so she wanted to sell. So she interviews a few different agents, and these guys go in and have an opportunity to give a listing presentation. So they show up after, I don't remember how many agents had been, 3 or 4 or something like that, but they show up and they sit down and take this lady through this and say, okay, they get to this part. What's your biggest concern about getting the property sold? And she said, actually, you're going to think this is kind of weird, but my biggest concern is, she said, I don't know if you noticed in the living room, the white carpet that was in there. And they said, oh yeah, we noticed it was beautiful. And she said, yeah, that was a gift from my husband, a birthday present from my husband, that white carpet. And she said, every other agent that has come in has told me that they were going to put it on their office tour, and they were going to do a board tour, and they were going to do open houses. And they just kept talking about all these people coming in. And all I could picture, she said, was that white carpet and just people walking across it. And next thing I know, before I've even sold the home and moved out, the white carpet's destroyed. She said, that's my biggest concern about selling this property. So that's the key on this. See, if you can find out what their concern is, then, so here's what they did. Now, to some extent, we've experienced this more so in the last year than ever in my career because of COVID. But what they did was they said, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to do it on a board tour. We're not going to put it on our office tour. In fact, we are not going to do any open houses on it. We will only let people come into your property who can afford it. Because they said, the truth is, they said to her, you're right. If you did an open house on a $15 million house, every car that drives by is going to want to go in and check it out, right? So you can see her concern. So they said, we're not going to do that. In fact, we're only going to let people come in and see your property who have been pre-approved by a lender. So we're going to make sure that they can afford your house or they're not coming in. And when they do come in, we're going to go down to the medical supply store and buy a box of booties. Well, like I remember last April, May, like everybody had a box of booties that you had to put on to walk in their house because they thought you were going to bring COVID off your shoes, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, so they said, we're going to go buy a $5 box of booties that you'll put over your shoes when people walk through. Guess who got the listing? Over a $5 box of the booties that you would put on. See, here's the point. People are not concerned so much about how many websites you're going to put their property on. People are not so concerned about like how many open houses you're going to do or how many flyers you're going to go pass out. What they have something that is concerning to them. Now, let me tell you one other quick story about this. So I used to train at a different company that's just up the street here. And as part of when I was at that company in training, actually, let me give you even more background. In about 2001, a national Coldwell Banker nationally came in and bought the 3 largest companies. So in Salt Lake, there was Mansell and Associates, which there's actually another one now of those up the street. Wardley Better Homes and Gardens and Coldwell Banker Premier Realty were the 3 main players in Salt Lake. Well, Coldwell Banker nationally came in and bought all 3 of those and merged them together. At the time of that merger taking place, there were 3,000 agents. So today we have at Century 21 Everest somewhere in the ballpark of 500 agents along the Wasatch Front. When that merger happened, there were 3,000 agents all in one company. Like, it was humongous. Now, immediately though, people started to leave like crazy. Well, the reason I tell you this story is if a company comes in and buys a real estate company, the way that it works is they typically will pay some of the money up front, and the rest of the money for the purchase of that asset is over time. And the reason for it is the challenge with a real estate company is the assets to a real estate company have legs. It's you guys. And they can walk out the door. And like I say, that company merged and there were 3,000 agents, but within a month it was down to like 1,500. Because the guy that they put in charge of it, half of the agents were like, I'm not working for that guy. And they all, I mean, like real estate companies started popping up all over the place. So that's why if you were ever to go out and buy a real estate company, you want to buy it based on the fact of, hey, I'll give you this much money up front, but then you got to make sure the agents stick around till a certain date, and then I'll give you the rest of the money, or it's paid out over time or whatever. So, but, and again, the reason I'm telling you all this is the owners of those three companies, what they wanted to see take place was every agent to stick around, because the more people that stuck around, the more money they would make. So as a result of it, there were 3 people that were in charge of the trainings. So that, because each of the companies had their own training program. And so there was this fight to keep each one of the trainers wanting to keep their training program in place. Well, I actually ended up talking to one of the other trainers about this process. And he said to me, well, when in this listing presentation are you going to talk about the stuff? Like all the websites you put, back then it wasn't websites, but the buyer's guide, the magazines that are at the grocery store. When are you going to talk about we had a thing called Fact Line that you would put on the bottom of the sign and people would call it, and then it would give them an audio tour of the house. This home features 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, whatever. And so he was like, when are you going to talk to the people in this listing presentation about that? And I said, I'm not going to talk about that stuff unless it's their biggest concern. If it's not their biggest concern, why would I talk about it? They don't care how many websites. They don't care. In fact, actually, Crystal, at the start of class, before we started, Crystal walked over here and said, just in case you guys don't know this, she walked over here and she's like, hey, I noticed these things that all talk about number one office. And she's like, out of how many offices? And I said, I don't remember the number, but it's 6,000 or 8,000 that this Everest office, Century 21 office, is the number one office in the whole Century 21 system across the whole world. And she was like, what? I had no idea. I thought it was just like this was the number one Everest office out of like 7 offices. I'm like, no, this is the number one office in the whole Century 21 system across the whole world. And so, but here's my point. Your consumers don't care about that. Like, it's great. It's a great ego thing for us, but the consumer doesn't care that we're the number. I mean, there could be some value in it. Like, I hope George isn't somewhere. His ego might care. No, I'm just kidding. But at the end of the day, they care about themselves. What the seller cares about. In that scenario I told you about the lady, she was concerned that, look, I understand they might rip out the carpet after I move out, but I don't want it destroyed while I'm here. See, every seller has that. So this other trainer with the company was asking me, when are you going to talk about all that stuff? And I said, I'm not. And he said, well, I just don't understand how you could ever get a listing then. And I said, oh, well, let's role play it then. And so I had him do a role play with me. And I asked him, what's your biggest concern? And in the scenario we role played, he had gotten a job transfer. And so when I said, what's your biggest concern? He's like, well, I have to go start this new job. And my wife's still going to be here. And people are going to be walking through the house. And I'm not here to protect my wife and, to make sure she's safe or what. Okay. So if you're the listing agent on that, what you need to talk about then is how are you going to make sure that he can feel comfortable that his wife's safe while he started the new job. See, if you do that, they'll pay a 7% commission because you're going to meet their needs. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So that's the idea of, I spent way more time than I intended to, but that's the idea of this needs, wants, and expectation is you're just going to keep asking questions to get the detail of what's important to them. What do they expect? How are they going to choose? You might even ask that. That might be a question you ask of here. Ultimately, what's going to be the decision maker on which agent you list your home with? And they may say, well, it's going to be the agent who can blah, 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 whatever. But I tell you, what I have found is it's what's your biggest fear or your concern or what's going to keep you up at night worrying about this transaction. That's what I want to resolve for them. Okay. All right. Now that we've done that, then number 4 here is now going to be, I'm going to call it plan of action. But think of it this way, really for the seller, I'm calling it a plan of action. For you guys, what we're doing during number 4 is I'm going to separate myself. This is your chance to separate yourself from the competition. Okay? That's what I'm trying to do. So in number 4 is where now I want to separate myself from the competition. Well, how do I do that? The way you're going to do that is by answering. So this, Aiden, now is when you were asking the question before, now is when I'm going to answer those. So I'm going to have taken notes up here of all the things that they said about their needs, wants, and their expectations and their concerns. Then what I'm going to do down here in the plan of action is to say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you mentioned XYZ. This is what I do. Now, here's the key piece for you guys, though. Here's how you want to do it. On this plan of action section, what you want to do is this. You want to be using this basically as your common thing that you're going to say. Most agents blank, but and you don't have to, this isn't like, this is not an actual script. I'm just writing down what my thought is in my head at the moment. So there may be a better way of saying this is what I'm saying. But ultimately, this is what I'm going to do. So let's go back to the lady with the carpet, okay? So how I'm going to handle that is I'm going to say to her, so most agents are going to want to bring a ton of people through your house. They're going to want to do the open house. They're going to want to do that on their board tour. They're going to want to have an agent tour of the house. They're going to want to bring a ton of people through. See, so to some extent, I'm almost stoking the fire a little bit of saying, yeah, most agents are going to want to ruin your carpet. Like that's not what I'm saying, but that's what I'm saying, right? Is most agents want to ruin your carpet, but not me. See, so that's kind of how you're now going to separate yourself. This is how most agents work. Let me tell you how I work. And so maybe that's even the better way of wording it is here's how most agents work, but here's how I do it. Something like that, okay? So that's where I would be saying to that seller, you know, most agents are going to want to ruin your carpet. They're going to bring so many people through that it's going to be destroyed, but not me. Here's how I'm going to do it instead. So that's ultimately what's this plan of action section. This is the hardest part for me to train to you guys. And the reason that it's the hardest thing for me to train is because I don't know what they're going to say up here. I mean, I have a general idea, but like prior to hearing that, I would have never thought that somebody was going to be worried about the white carpet in one room of the house as being their biggest concern. But here's what I will tell you. Every single seller is going to have one or two things that they're worried about and what they're concerned with. And if you can, in number 4 here, answer those questions for them, you'll win. So let me just give you a couple of examples. When you ask somebody up here in 3 of, hey, tell me about your concerns that you've had with other agents, you know, or tell me what you liked or didn't like. One of the things that's going to come up pretty commonly is going to be communication. Anybody that has worked with agents in the past, most of the time, I shouldn't say anybody, most of the time, people are going to have concerns about, they're going to say the agent didn't communicate very well with me. So as a result, you're going to want to end up then dealing with that. So let me give you an example. Here's how I would handle it, is I would do that. Hey, let me tell you, Swen, most agents will list a home and then they don't call you as the seller until they get an offer. So if you don't get an offer on your home, you might not hear from the agent for weeks. See, so I almost kind of want to paint the picture of like, be careful who you list with because you might never hear from them again. So I'm saying most agents, that's how they work, but not me, Swen. That's not how I do it. I call, and now watch how I do this. So, Swen, I call my sellers on and you decide the day, but I'll just say Monday. Every Monday, I call my sellers between 11 and 12. What number should I call you on this coming Monday between 11 and 12 to update you?
801-414.
Okay, so now what just happened?
I gave information to you.
In essence, what did I just tell him?
What your schedule is.
I'm your agent. We're listing your home. I'm going to add you to my schedule to start calling you. So notice that it's a little bit of a subtle close that I did with Swen by saying, hey, so not me. Most agents don't call their people back. I always call my sellers on Monday between 11 and 12. What number should I call you this coming Monday on? And then, well, yeah, call me at this number. Okay, see, in essence, we're already heading down the path of I'm your agent. Okay, So, but I'm also sending the message. So now Trevor, since for whatever reason, I keep going to Trevor on for sale by owner and expired, but it applies to everybody. But on for sale by owner and expired, I might, if I had the person even just saying, hey, I'm concerned because I had this bad experience where an agent called or listed with me, they never called me back. I might then go, hey, okay, Trevor, here, let's do this. I'm going to actually put in my contract that if I don't call you every Monday between 11 and 12 and at least leave a voicemail, that you could get out of the listing. If I fail to call you back, you can have the listing back, and I'll cancel it immediately. They're going to go, okay, I like that idea. Okay. So now I don't just offer that to anybody, but I'm going to offer that if it was a concern, then I might, if they were worried, like, well, how do I know when I list my home with you, you're not going to do that. Well, then here's what I'll do. Okay. So I'll just give them a solution. Or the other thing you could do is you could say, well, what would you propose as a solution to that then, Trevor? So I might let them propose, because I might like their solution better than mine even. They might say, if you don't call me once a month. Now, truth is, you should call your sellers once a week. So just like, let's establish that separate from what we're talking about here. When you list a property, you should have a set time. And I don't care when it is, you decide. But once a week, this is the time that I call my sellers, and you should call to go, hey, here's what's happened. Now, to some extent, the reason agents don't call is because in their mind, the agent's like, well, if somebody came through your house, I would have called you and set up an appointment. But because I didn't hear from you, you know that I didn't. That's why they don't do it. Still call every week, even if it's to call and say, nothing happened. Just wanted to update you that we had this many showing or viewings online on your website, on our website, on looking at your home, but apparently people didn't like it enough to want to call or to come and see it. So, but just at least at a minimum. Okay. All right. So communication. So ultimately is, think of it this way. Section 4 here of this is take whatever they've said up here and tell them how you're going to meet that here. Go ahead.
So one thing that I've been hearing is just the concern of being able to find a place in this market on the buying side. So what's a good way to kind of attack
Okay, so
that?
good. Yeah, let's role play it. So what's your biggest concern about getting your home sold?
I don't know if we'll find a house and how long it's going to take us.
Sure, yeah. So, and believe me, I can understand that in this market. I could see, if I were you, I would be worried about that too. So here's the good news. Here's how we're going to handle it. So now again, I would get all my questions first, but down here under plan of action, I would be saying, okay, so one of the things you mentioned that you were concerned about listing your home is finding someplace else. Well, let me tell you the way most agents work. So now notice, this is how I approach it every single time. The way most agents work is, they're going to put your home on the market and they're going to just say, well, we'll figure it out and we'll line it up somehow. They may even say to you that, here's what we're going to do is we're going to put your house on the market and we'll make it subject to you finding a new place, which is a great idea. And we'll do that. But let me tell you what I do as an agent. See, right now in today's market, what I'm about to say, I saw the other day, just so you guys know, and this is how I would present it to the seller. I actually saw a study that an agent did recently where they were tracking the homes that had sold in an area. And here, you know what's fascinating is the homes that were sold as a limited agent. Now, I wouldn't say limited agent to the seller because they don't know what that means. But for you guys, this was interesting to me. The homes that sold as a limited agent, meaning the buyer's agent was the listing agent, sold basically at list price versus the $20,000 or $30,000 above the price. So here's how I'm going to handle that with this seller. I'm going to say, here's the good news. We're going to put yours on the MLS, and more than likely another agent's going to bring the buyer, which means you're going to net a pretty high price because we're in today's market, there was going to be competition. But here's the thing that I'm going to do. Most agents won't do what I'm about to offer to do to you, for you. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to go knock on, you're going to let me know what area, the style of everything of home. I'm actually going to go out and knock on doors and find a seller we could negotiate a price so you don't have to compete. So the best news is we're going to get multiple offers on your house, and I'm going to go out and find a property for you that is not competing. So we don't have to go bid way high on the price. And in fact, potentially get you a pretty good deal on the home. But in the meantime, we will make with these other buyers either it contingent upon you finding it, or we'll allow for like 60 or 90 days for you to live here rent free. How's that sound?
Okay.
Does that seem like that would work for you?
Sure.
You didn't sound very convinced there.
Yeah, well,
Well, the good news is if we make it contingent upon you selling the property, we don't have to worry about it. But like I said, the difference between me and other agents, I'm gonna actually go find you a property that hopefully we don't have to compete on. Sound good?
Yep.
All right. What other questions? Okay, you clear on number 4 here then. Basically, you're gonna do it as most agents do this, but I do it this way. Now, let me, again, I know I'm redundant on this, but I'm gonna keep doing. I'm trying to create this scenario. And hopefully I've created value and separated myself at the end of number 4. Okay. I should have done that at this point because of what we've talked about with them. If you're clear, say yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So now that we've done that, I'm going to draw the line across here again, like we did up above. This is the stopping point for this. This is where I'm now going to check to see have they chosen me. So let me show you what that looks like. So right here, before I go on to number 5, which that's going to be the next thing we do here is number 5. But before I go to number 5, I'm going to check in to see if they've chosen me. And here's what that sounds like. So here's what I'm going to do. So Trevor. So let's assume we've talked about everything from number 3 in number 4, and I've done the most agents do this, but this is how I work. Most agents do this, but this is how I do it. Most agents do it this way, but so I'm going to just do that on the 2 or 3 things that they have that were concerns. Okay. Now that I've done that, I'm going to say, all right, Trevor. So let me just kind of just see where we're at. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being 100% you want to have me be your agent, 0 being there's no way I couldn't even pay you to be your agent. Where are we at on a scale of 1 to 10?
9.
We're at a 9. Okay, perfect. So what would have to happen for me to get to be in a 10?
I just want to make sure that I'm in the right hands and you seem to know what you're doing, but I just really need to be completely there with knowing that you're going to do everything you can.
Okay, so it sounds like I have not really helped you see that yet then. So how do I get you to see that to have that? Because see, now let me pause for a minute. Essentially what he's saying is he's not sure he trusts me yet or that he feels safe. That's what he's telling me. So I'm going to just ask that. So what would I need to do to give you that reassurance? Now notice I'm asking him for the solution.
I put it that way because I want to see how you react.
Sure, no, that's great. So what would I have to do? How
Um,
could I reassure you that way?
Call me every Monday throughout. Just that's all I'll say.
Okay, so if I will just commit to that I'll call you every Monday, and if I don't, that you could get out of the listing.
Perfect.
Would that give you that?
Yes.
Okay, so sounds like we're good to go then of us working together.
Yeah.
Perfect. Now I'll go to price. Does that make sense? So here's the thing. At this point, after number 4, I am just going to stop and say, okay, I just want to check in to see where we're at. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being yes, 0 being no, or 1 being you're not going to work with me, where are we at? And here's the thing. Anything less than a 10, if they say anything less than a 10, then I'm just going to stop and say, hey, so what do we have to do to get to a 10? Now, he might have said, well, I don't know. I have no idea, but I just, I'm sure there's something. I mean, if he said that, then that's good enough. That's a 10, basically, right? Meaning, like, I think I told you guys the story before. Maybe I didn't, but for me, like, I'm one. If you asked me to rate your service on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm almost, even if I thought you did a great job, I probably would say 9 because I would be like, I'm sure there was something you could do better, but I don't know what it is. But so if you come across the me like that's not going to say 10 and they tell you, I don't know, I'm just sure there's something, then that's the same as a 10. But if they said a 7 and I go, okay, well, so it sounds like I haven't fully convinced you yet. So tell me what's holding you back. What are you concerned about? And then I'm just concerned because whatever. And then once they give you that, they go, okay, well, what would you recommend that we do? And because you might like their solution better than yours. But in the event that I don't, then I would say, well, how about if we did this or that instead? Make sense? Okay. Now that I've done that, so we're assuming that they've agreed. Now, I'm surprised you guys didn't ask this one. So before we go on, I'll just bring it up because somebody's thinking it. What if they say, well, I don't know, I told this other agent I would meet with them later. So then what do you get? So you're a 9. Okay, well, what do I have to do to be a 10? Well, I don't know, I got to meet with this other agent first because I told them I would meet with them at 4:00 today. So how should I handle it? Because I'm not going on to price.
Let's make it a 10.
What?
And then if I'm a 9, let's make it a 10, and then I'll save you the time. You don't have to make it that.
Okay, not a bad idea of just saying, hey, if you're there, then here's what I'll do. If you're worried about that, if you're comfortable with me, I will call and cancel. You don't even have to call and cancel. In fact, have them let you call and cancel because you calling and canceling, if they call to cancel, the agent might convince them to, no, let me still come out. But if I call, I can be like, hey, they asked me to call and let you know they've listed their home with me. And so unfortunately, they don't need to meet with you.
Yeah, when buyers work, shouldn't hear about it.
That's right. And if we got buyers, bring them over. Yeah.
It works really well because their fear is.
But what about the person who says, nope, I told them I would meet with them. I'm a man of my word. And so I'm going to meet with them.
That's fair, we can still sign, and then if you change your mind, we can cancel our contract.
Okay, that could work. Let's just sign it now. And then if you change your mind after meeting with them, maybe.
Or I'll come at 4, I'll come back at 4 and we can all sit together.
So I like that one, actually. Here's for me. Go ahead, Trevor.
What reasons have I given you to meet with another agent?
Okay, you could ask that. Yeah, why do you still feel like you need to? But there are some people that are going to just say, I don't know. I just feel like there are some people that say, I just won't make a decision until I've met with 3 people. I don't care who it is.
Are we assuming this question came up before or after we talked price?
We have not. No, we don't talk price. See, I'm not talking. Here's the key thing. I'm not talking about the price until I know they've chosen me.
That's why I asked.
Yeah.
Just to make sure it wasn't like, oh yeah, we talked about the price. And they're
Nope.
like, well,
I'm
by
not-
the way,
I'm not giving them the
he
price.
might tell you 5%, and you just told me,
Right.
so-
That's why I'm not talking price. So for me, if at that point, so I like what Miriam was saying. To some extent, I might say, great. If I can't get past it, I'm going to say, great. Let's stop right here then, and let's have you meet with that person. But here's what I want: is I want the same courtesy to be able to finish my presentation, but I just want to do it after theirs. Because here's why. People will tend to list with the last person they meet with. Now, that could be the same as me saying, hey, I'll call and cancel your appointment. Therefore, I'm the last one they met with. That's why they signed with me. If you leave and somebody else shows up, there's a pretty good chance they're getting the listing. So for me, I'm going to do everything I can to try to get it then. But if I can't, then if they won't move, then I won't talk price. Great. I'll come back after. So what Miriam said, you're meeting with them at 4. Can I come back at 5 then? And I'll sit down and answer any questions they bring up.
Just curious, when you said that the agent said, no, I told them I was gonna be there. Have you heard, has someone done that before? Like to call to cancel with another agent?
Oh,
and
yeah.
it declines?
Oh, no.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever heard them decline.
Oh,
Have you ever had
Maybe
that?
I
I've never
misread,
had
maybe I misread what you
I-
said there.
I walked out of
What I was,
appointment
what I was saying is that if the seller calls and says, hey, never mind, we've got an agent we're already gonna list with, there's a chance that agent is good enough to say, well, no, let me just at least come talk to you. Let me just still show
It
up.
won't hurt.
Versus if I call them and say, hey, just wanted you to know, we just listed so let's role play, okay?
Okay.
So I call, hey, just wanted to let you know, the Jones that you were gonna be meeting with at 4:00 today, I actually just got the listing signed with them. They don't need to meet with you anymore.
I'm just gonna call and make sure they're okay.
Okay, well, just keep in mind, they've signed a buyer, exclusive right to sell with me, which means if you call them, you're interfering with my agency.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
That's how I would handle it.
Yeah, okay.
So if I find out you called them, like you're interfering with my agency now, so now they might say, well, no, I'm not gonna interfere with your agency. I'm just gonna call to see why they didn't meet with me. in which case there probably would be nothing wrong with that. But,
Yeah.
but I still would just say, if you call them, I'll turn you into the board for an ethics violation because you're messing with my client. No. They're probably, most agents are probably going to go, all right, yeah, thanks. All right, number 5. So the next thing, so let's assume that we've gotten to price now, okay? So then the next thing in here is going to be the market or price, right? So this is where I said we're going to start by talking about the macro, the big picture. So this is going to be, hey, here's what's going on in the market today. Inventory is really low. Typically, people are seeing multiple offers on properties. However, we don't want to overprice it. We don't want to be too aggressive. Because here's the thing. We could list this thing way low and it's still going to sell for the same price. In fact, it's probably going to sell for higher if we list it for a lower price. So that's what I'm kind of going to be saying into this macro. What's the big picture? Now, as the market changes over time, we'll do the same thing. Hey, interest rates have gone up. Inventory's already started to decline. Like whatever is currently going on in the market is what you're going to tell them there. Then B is pricing. So how is what's going on in the market today going to affect their price? That's the next thing that I want to talk to with them is based on what's going on in the market. See, so to some extent today, in today's market, you know, if I'm going out, I might be like, hey, we just got to be in the ballpark in today's market in terms of pricing. So let's look at what that ballpark is. And then I'm going to go on to C, which is the CMA. Okay. The one thing that I am going to just say though, even though it's not as crucial today, but just so that you guys have it for future markets, is typically on the pricing piece in a different market, I'm going to walk them through the pricing strategy, which the pricing strategy, so let me just put that over here. Your pricing strategy is going to look like this. If every 3 weeks, and actually in today's market, you might want to say 3 days, but, but 3 weeks.
True.
Yeah, but every 3 weeks, essentially, we want to look at the number of showings that they're getting and the number of offers. So under a typical normal market, which I don't know that we're going to see for a whole lot of years, so to some extent, you may want to say every 3 days, and maybe once a week probably really is better than 3 days. But if you have had no showings and no offers, especially in today's market, that means your price is, yeah, you're overpriced. And typically it means you need to reduce it between 7 and 10%. Okay? So if you've had no showings, no offers, a price reduction between 7 and 10% is what you need to do. Now you might be more than 10% overpriced, but you should be reducing it between 7 and 10. If you have had some showings, and I would define that as 1 to 3 a week, but no offers, you should reduce the price between 5 and 7%. Okay? Now, the reason for that is homes will sell. If you go back, if you were to go look, and you can go on the MLS up under, for you guys that are analyticals, go to statistics and go to sales per month, and then you can go back and look for however many years you want to go back and look. And what you will see is homes typically will sell, even in back in 2008, 2009, 2010, homes would sell for within 4% of the list price. So homes will sell. If you get to within 4% of what the price should be, it'll sell. And so that's why we follow this as our pricing strategy. And so when you go out on a listing presentation, now, like I said, in today's market, I wouldn't spend a lot of time, but I would spend enough. And here's why. The next thing I see happening in our market, and I think it's starting to happen now, is sellers are going to get so unrealistic that they're going to start pricing properties too high, even for today's market. So for me, I still want to at least have them know, hey, we can try that price, but just know in the event that we end up getting no showings and no offers, we need to be reducing the price by X%. Okay. So, but I wouldn't do a ton of time on it, but I would spend a little on that. Then the CMA part here is where I'm going to now just pull out, here's the homes that are on the market that are similar to yours and what they have sold for. And I would try to keep that within 30 to 45 days in today's market. Like the more recent, the better. You get even 2 months out and it's probably not as accurate. Okay. All right. Any questions on the the market / price, I guess I should call it probably. We good on that? All right, then the final thing is close. Now remember, so let me show you. The close should be the easiest part of this. If you have done it right, the close is going to be the easiest part. The natural ending to a good presentation is the close. So if you have done your job right on this, it should be simple. And what I mean by that is this. Remember back when I said to, was it Swen or Trevor? It was Trevor. That I said, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we at? And he said a 9. And okay, well, what's holding you back? I mean, in essence, I'm getting an agreement for them to list with me before I even got to the price. So you could actually even have them sign the listing agreement before you have even started talking about the price that you're going to be doing on their home. But the natural ending should just be the close. Meaning, if I've done it right, all the number 5 is on here is us coming to an agreement on the price. Because we've already decided we're working together. So, hey, so what's the price? Great. Then let's go ahead and get the paper signed. Like that's essentially number 6 is great. Did you want it to, here's how I usually do it. Did you want it to hit the market this weekend, or did you want to wait till after the weekend? That's usually how I would do it is, hey, did you want it? So it's what, today's Wednesday. Did you want it to hit the market on Friday, or did you want to wait till Monday? That's essentially my close. And then they're going to go, I don't know, Friday. Actually, they're going to go, what do you think? And I'm going to say probably Friday.
This is just right before sitting. It's like you're not even closing yet, but you're essentially closing, before you're like, all right, sign here. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, essentially, I'm just saying, did you want to hit Friday or Monday? They say Friday. Great. I just need you to sign the papers. Okay.
When you're going over pricing, should you see what they think their house is worth before you do the CMA and stuff, or?
Oh, yes, I love to have an idea of what they think their house is worth for sure. Because the reason for that is because then I know if I'm going to have to really be strong on convincing them, or if I can just go in and be like, no, yeah, you're good.
Because some people are just like looking online anyways, and then so they're like, well, my house looks better than this one, so
Yeah.
Mine's worth 500,000. Then you do your comps, and it's like maybe 450.
Right. Yeah. Or the opposite of that too is I've got a lady that contacted me about a property downtown that she hasn't told me yet. She keeps being like, well, I want to hear what you think. I want to hear what you think. But I think she thinks her house is probably worth 100,000 less than it really is. I think, but I don't know.
Value has
Go
a
ahead.
place to be.
Yeah.
So one thing you want to watch for, we as expressives have this tendency to keep talking. If they pick up a pen and start clicking it, shut up and sign. We have a tendency to keep talking and trying to convincing. The body language says a lot. So as you're watching them, watch how they are. If they're restless and somewhat detached, you don't got them yet. So the body language will tell a ton. And you can close it real simple if they pick up a pen. It's almost a subconscious they don't even know what to do with.
Perfect. Go
So
ahead.
how do you get
Always
paid?
keep a pen.
How do you get, what do you mean?
I do.
I'm the customer or the.
Oh, if you were asking.
Yeah,
oh.
so, okay, yeah, sure. This weekend, so how do you get paid?
Oh, great question. I'm glad you asked that. Thank you. I'm excited you brought that up. Actually, I don't get paid until you do. So at the end of the day, if you don't get paid, neither do I. So at closing is how I get paid. So, and when we get an offer in, I'm going to negotiate for you the very best deal that we can get. So, does that answer your question?
Sort of.
Well, if not, then do a follow-up.
Okay, so is there a maximum percentage that we're gonna pay you when the home sells?
Yeah. What's the max you would be willing to pay?
Take as much.
I guess, do you bring up?
So yeah, good. No, here's what I would recommend.
They can physically see the sign.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's on the
I didn't know if you
contract.
verbalize it or you just kind of let them skim over it. I wouldn't.
Yeah, if they don't ask, let me rephrase that. You'll see when I teach the seller packet class, I go into detail on how to kind of deal with that. But kind of for how I would answer it for you today, I would say, here's the contract, and you can either read it, I can tell you what it says, or you can just sign it, which you want to do. And they generally go, just tell me what it says. And then I'll just go through, okay, here's basically what it says is that you're going to use me as the agent, and I'm going to be on your side. I'm going to be looking out for your best interest. I'm going to, blah, blah, blah. So, and then we'll cover that in more detail, but in the seller packet class. But yeah, so I'm ultimately, if they're asking me what's the commission, then I'm not going to hide from it. But I'm also just going to go through and here's the contract.
I'm only curious because I haven't done a listing and
sure.
So you typically wouldn't want to bring a blank fee paper, because then they physically see you.
Yeah, I typically don't do that.
So that was my bad yesterday.
All right, so
Okay,
we can do like what you humor me for like 2 more seconds. So I see here that it says that you guys charge like 7%.
Uh-huh. Yeah, did you want to do 8 or 9 even?
All right, let's turn it into a joke.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will, but no, keep going though. So
Okay.
say what you're gonna say.
So is that pretty standard
For my clients, that is standard, yes.
Okay, awesome. Now, I'm a little concerned because that can be a lot of money. We're selling our house for like 500,000.
Yeah.
7% of 500 is quite a bit.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So it's also probably your biggest investment that you have, right?
Yeah.
So if you were gonna go to court over your life, would you want a cheap attorney or an expensive one? Well, I know, but for real, like, do you want Johnny Cochran or, the glove don't fit, you must have quit? Do you know that?
No, I don't.
You don't know what that means? Oh my God.
That ages you, Russ.
I know.
Yeah,
Oh, you know who O.J. Simpson is?
I do. Yeah, I know that one.
That was his attorney.
Oh, really?
That's how he got acquitted.
Yeah,
Is if the glove don't fit, you must have quit.
He was supposed to be wearing these gloves when he sat there, but he couldn't get it on his hands. His hands were like way too big.
Oh my goodness.
Clearly, that's not his.
So it couldn't have been him that did it. So, you're not going to get that for
2%.
Yeah, for 2%. So
Honestly, I try to keep 8% all the time.
yeah. So let me give you just an idea real quick on this. Justin Udy, who is one of our top agents here in this office, what he does, and I think this is a great way to do it, is he has a menu of services. This is what I do for 6%, this is what I do for 7%, and this is what I do for 8%. And then essentially you can say to the person, hey, which of the services do you want me to cut out? What's the verbiage you always use?
When I'm talking about commissions?
Yeah, which of my tools did you want?
Oh, yeah. Well, sometimes I'll go, okay, if you're in the dentist chair and you want him, because he's doing it for cheaper, are you okay if he leaves out the Novocaine while he drills your teeth?
Yeah.
It's gonna be a problem, right? Yeah. But it's really, you have to get them to focus on what's important, and that's the bottom dollar. So I'm always asking, so let me ask you this, what you're asking me is to really put more money in your pocket, correct? So if I can put more money in your pocket, does it matter what you're paying me if you're making more? Yeah, let's sign the contract.
But usually you say something about which of my tools did you
Oh
want?
yeah, I'm gonna go, well, so which tools do you want me to eliminate by doing it for less? Again, you have to cast a vision.
So that's why I love the Justin Udy of here's what I do for 6, here's what I do for 7, and here's what I do for 8. Basically, it's the Goldilocks principle. Like,
for the middle.
yeah, typically, same thing like with iPhone, they used to always come out with, we've got this storage, or this storage. Like, go with the middle ones. So, what they'll do though is they'll say, well, would you be willing to do the services that you do at 8%, but do it for 7?
Sure. Yeah.
And then
For
just
you,
decide, for you, I'll do it.
I'll do it.
Yeah, for you, I'll do it. Don't tell anybody though.
Yeah.
Kind of how I approach it.
No, thanks.
Does that help?
Yeah, it helps a lot.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, good. So the close ultimately is just going to be, hey, when did you want to get started? Because all along the way, even back to when I said to Swen, I call my sellers on Monday between 11 and 12. What number do you want me to call you on Monday? That's part of the close. I've been closing the whole presentation. Even back to, you didn't catch it, but remember on the thank, acknowledge, promise? I walked into the house saying, Swen, the curb appeal is awesome on this property, and it's going to look great when we put it on the market. That's essentially, I'm setting them up for the close from the minute I walk in the door by saying, wow, when we put your home on the market, that curb appeal is going to help get it sold. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. What other questions?
Is the date you put on the contract the day they want it listed or the day they're signing?
A good question. So on our exclusive right to sell contract at the very top, it says effective date. That's the date that the contract will become effective. So they'll sign it the date and date it the day that they sign it, but it's not effective until the date that we put it.
Which would be the listing day.
Yeah, well, yeah, so if you were saying, like, if we were signing it today and I was saying we're gonna have it be effective on Friday, the board then gives us 24 hours from when it's the effective date to be on the market.
So if you did that incorrectly, you would need to.
And then, yep,
So, in that case, let's say I sign a listing agreement today, but it's not effective till till next Monday.
Okay.
And there's another agent that is coming in, and I can say, hey, I signed an agreement, but it's not effective, right?
well, I wouldn't tell them it's not effective.
That's true. But if they call and said, oh, I guess you could come because this says the effective date is not for another 5 days, and that person still could come in, right?
Well, so the problem is they've already signed with me, so they have it. I guess if they could get it sold in the
5 days.
5 days.
So just.
Are you guys hear okay on Zoom? Either somebody unmute or let me know. Can you hear?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
No, you broke up.
We just had a notice that said that the microphone wasn't working, so. All right, Rick's gonna bring us home.
I'm gonna bring you
I don't know what
home.
he's saying, but
The people
This is it.
left are gonna be very disappointed. So we just negotiated downstairs a great value for you agents. If you have buyers that are on the fence right now or people you're trying to get moving, we just negotiated downstairs with the Everest Advantage at Inspiro. Bring the client to them. They'll give you a free rushed appraisal for your client.
wow.
That's a $600-700 value. That's one way to get people off their butt to start looking. Go down, tell them Rick said this, talk to either Cynthia or Jim Hogan to align with an LO down there. Put your people, you can call people and say, hey, right now I got a great advantage for you, free appraisal. They'll get you underwritten approved. That's the Everest Advantage. So your buyers like cash. They just have to get the home to pass by. So use this right now, leverage into it.
I'm assuming that's the same for California too, guys, but
Yeah.
we'll double check.
So anyway, use that right now. That's going to be an advantage to get people moving really good right now. And $600-700 advantage right now for you. Use it.
So, hey, one last thing, then we'll answer your question, Aiden. For you guys on Zoom, if you did not put your first and last name and office in the chat box, please do. All right, go ahead, Aiden.
So you said what, free appraisal or free brush on appraisal?
No, free appraisal, rushed. Here's the thing. If you have listings and they're coming in and you got XYZ mortgage as the approval letter, you can always also say, hey, look, we have a lender that's giving, if you use them, a free appraisal. They qualify with our people. We have more control.
Yeah.
So don't let that pass you by either. Use it as a qualifying factor for offers that are coming in for your listings. Because this is an opportunity you should take an advantage of right now, because this doesn't happen all the time or forever.
How long are they doing that?
Till I tell them to quit. So a long time.
Don't tell them ever to
Yes,
quit.
yeah. So take advantage. Go down there and align with somebody. Ask for the advantage, the Everest Advantage. They're going to underwrite and approve your buyers. Put you in a stronger position to negotiate.
All right, cool. So for tomorrow,
Thank you.
tomorrow is probably, if you are never going to attend any of my classes ever again, make sure you at least come tomorrow. Because I'm telling you, tomorrow's class, if you don't do anything else we've talked about and you'll do what I teach you tomorrow, you'll be successful.
I'm going to be here.
What is tomorrow's class?
SOI. Yeah. So thanks for being here.
Thanks.
See you guys.
Okay, we're at on this floor.
First floor, right, that's the morning.
Oh, okay.
Jamie,
Jamie Fiddler. I'm Chantel. Wanted to introduce myself. I'm Sterling and Brandon's
Okay, cool. So how long do you have your license?
3 weeks, I started.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank
cool.
you.
Okay. Well, welcome. Good to
Thanks.
meet you.
Thanks.
Yes, please do.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So my first week I was here, I called this guy. He's up in Park City, and he has cash. He was on the Park City ski team. His parents were rich, and he wants to buy a property in Park City for 1.5 near Iron County. And is there anybody? Could you guys get stuff that like if you want something that you can fix up and rent out in the future? Doesn't want it all decked out or anything. You know, like where's the best way to find properties like that? Any that come through here that you guys know about? Because I feel like he originally was like, no, we have a family realtor, and after I talked about skiing for a while, he was like, if I found a property around 1.4 near Iron County Road, I put an offer on it. So now I'm like, all right.
So your best thing is, I'd go knock on the doors right there. Just go knock on doors. Hey, I've got a buyer that wants to buy.
You know.
Yeah. With a good property, and I do it. At what price would you sell that?
And another thing I would do is I would actually try to connect with absentee homeowners. What is that?
No.
People
I
who
just
are renting
haven't
their home out of state.
Okay.
Look for the numbers out of state.
Yeah,